RCS Audiobooks presents Dignity and Respect, a Black Man's Guide to Understanding Himself by Ryan C. Sanders, aka Sensei Sanders. Preface, dedication, acknowledgments about the author. Part 1. The Mirror, Seeing Yourself with New Eyes. Chapter 1. The Weight of Being a Black Man. How history, stereotypes, survival mode, and silence shaped your identity. Chapter 2. The Psychology of Trauma and Manhood. Why we react the way we do. What we inherited and how to break the cycles. Chapter 3. Dignity, the Internal Kingdom. Understanding dignity as emotional wealth, spiritual structure, and masculine foundation. Chapter 4. Respect, the currency of manhood. Reclaiming self-respect, rebuilding confidence, and resetting your internal standard. Part 2. The Healing, rewiring the mind, regulating the heart. Chapter 5. Understanding your triggers. How trauma shows up in relationships, anger, silence, and self-sabotage. Chapter 6. Emotional intelligence for Black men. Naming feelings, regulating reactions, and strengthening emotional control. Chapter 7. Heal before you build, facing the father wound, mother wound, masculinity wound, and society wound. Chapter 8. Spiritual grounding and inner alignment, developing intuition, purpose, divine order, and ancestral connection. Part 3. The Men. Communication, brotherhood, and masculine maturity. Number 9. Communication mastery for modern Black men, speaking with clarity, listening with presence, leading with emotional intelligence. Chapter 10 will get into brotherhood and the return of community, why men need tribe, the elder peer, younger triad, and how to build real brotherhood. Chapter 11 will get into redefining success, alignment over image, from clout chasing to purpose living, replacing performance with identity. Part 5, the discipline, structure, strength, and the new masculine order. That'll be going into chapter 12 where we'll talk about honor, the Black woman as partner, not opponent, healing the male-female divide, creating emotional safety, and restoring balance. Chapter 13, discipline is your freedom. Building daily structure, mental toughness, boundaries, and consistency. Chapter 14, spiritual grounding and sexual energy. Mastering your urges, reclaiming your focus, and aligning your life's force energy. Part 5, the legacy, becoming the man your bloodline needed. Chapter 15 will get into legacy over likes, choosing impact over image, fatherhood principles, and generational healing. Chapter 16, becoming the foundation, how to lead your household, stabilize your community, and embody kingship. Chapter 17, the call to kingship, the final initiation, identity, responsibility, spiritual authority, and destiny. And we'll go into closing words. The preface. I grew up learning manhood by feel, not instruction. No blueprint, no father standing between me and the world, just a mother doing the job of two people while carrying the weight of four. When a boy grows up without a father, he becomes his own teacher too early. He learns strength without guidance. He learns survival without clarity. He learns independence without intimacy. He learns to love from a place missing pieces. Those missing pieces follow you into adulthood. They follow you into relationships. They follow you into parenthood, especially when you're trying to father a child while still learning how to father yourself. I wasn't the man my daughter needed in early years, not because I didn't love her, but because love isn't enough when you don't know how to show up. Distance, mistakes, inconsistency, pride, all symptoms of unhealed boy trying to wear a man's crown. but grace builds bridges where guilt builds walls. And with time, truth, accountability, and healing, my daughter and I rebuilt what almost broke. Today, our connection is not just restored, it's stronger, deeper, and more honest than anything I could have ever created without growth. This book is not written from perfection, it's written from evolution. It is the manual I wish I had as a young man, and the guide I now offer to every brother who wants to rise, repair, and reclaim himself. Dedication. To my daughter, whose love waited for the man I was still becoming. You gave me room to grow, grace to return, and the space to rebuild myself without closing the door on my future. You're proof that healing is real, forgiveness is powerful, and love is patient enough to witness a man transform. And to every black man who grew up fatherless, wounded, guessing at his own identity, this is for you. May you find in these pages the courage to repair what you lost, reclaim what you deserve, and rise into the father, partner, and leader you were always meant to be. Acknowledgements. To my mother, the original warrior in my story. You held the line. You played both roles. You raised a fighter, a thinker, a creator, and a man who refuses to quit. Your strength was my first classroom. Your love was my first protection. To my wife, thank you for teaching me through your growth what it means to be a man. Thank you for seeing the man inside the mistakes. Thank you for choosing connection over resentment. You gave me the greatest honor a man can receive, the chance to show up better. To the brothers, the ones doing the work, the ones breaking the cycles, the ones learning emotional discipline, the ones rebuilding families, the ones fathering kids they didn't create, the ones healing wounds they didn't ask for. You are the quiet revolution in our community. To every sister, thank you for your patience, your boundaries, your insight, and the way you continue to love a people who don't always know how to love themselves. Your resilience is the center of our survival. And to God, aka Universal Consciousness Catalyst, whose grace within me fill every gap, whose wisdom insists and shapes every lesson, and whose timing turns every loss into a step toward purpose. About the author. Ryan C. Sanders is a man who grew up in the same confusion many black men carry but rarely speak about. Trying to become a man in a world that gives you responsibility without instruction, pressure without guidance, and expectation without support. Raised without a father, Ryan learned manhood in real time, watching the streets, listening to his mother's resilience, interpreting survival as strength, and shaping himself through instinct instead of mentorship. When you grow up without a blueprint, you spend years trying to draw one from scratch. And Ryan lived that reality. His journey became even more complex when he became a father himself. Distant circumstances and unhealed wounds created gaps between him and his daughter that he didn't even yet have the emotional tools to repair. But becoming a single father didn't break him, it woke him up. That season forced him to confront the truth many men avoid. You can't lead a household if you haven't first learned how to lead yourself. Through therapy, accountability, spiritual grounding, and deep inner work, Ryan rebuilt the bridge with his daughter, not through guilt, but through growth. Today, their relationship is one of strength, trust, and truth. Their bond is proof that men can change, heal, return, and become the fathers they once wished they had. Navigating a world that often feels stacked against black men, Ryan discovered the principle that changed his life. When I changed the way I looked at things, the things I looked at changed. This mindset became the backbone of his philosophy, his healing, and ultimately this book. It taught him that perspectives create power, responsibilities create dignity, discipline creates freedom, emotional intelligence creates stability, and inner work creates outward transformation. As the creator of mental martial arts, Ryan combines psychology, street wisdom, spiritual grounding, and lived experience to help men see themselves clearly, not as the world labels them, but as they truly are. He writes for the men who are trying to figure life out while still carrying childhood wounds. He writes for the fathers trying to navigate co-parenting through pain. He writes for the brothers trying to stay disciplined in a world designed to distract them. He writes for the ones who want to love deeply but never saw love modeled correctly. He writes for the men trying to break generational patterns with no blueprint except their own courage. Dignity and respect is Ron's offering to the brotherhood. A reminder that healing is not weakness, clarity is not optional, and manhood is not defined by perfection, but evolution. This isn't just another author. This is a man who lived the work, bled through the lessons, repaired with what he broke, and now stands strong enough to guide others into their own rise. Ryan C. Sanders is not telling men who to be. He's showing men what is possible. Part 1. The Internal War. Chapter 1. The Psychological Roots of Dignity. Dignity is not a reward. Dignity is a memory. Before the world misnamed you, your dignity was whole. You entered the world worthy, without needing validation, permission, or performance. But the indigenous black man has lived through centuries of systems designed to disconnect him from that truth. He inherited labels instead of identity, suspicion instead of safety, judgment instead of understanding, pressure instead of support, survival instead of stability. Dignity then becomes more than self-esteem. It becomes recovery. When a man has been mispresented, misunderstood, miseducated about his own worth, the journey back to dignity becomes a form of spiritual justice. Reclaiming dignity is not about pride. It's about restoration of the internal truth that oppression tried to bury. From a psychological lens, dignity is the foundation of resilience. When a man knows who he is less reactive. He thinks before he moves. He communicates instead of combusts. He walks with clarity instead of chaos. He stops chasing validation. He rises above triggering environments. When dignity is damaged, a man becomes unstable. When dignity is restored, it becomes unshakable. Here's a statement. The world you live in was not designed for your peace. That's not negativity. That's neuroscience. Chronic exposure to racism and social threat rewires the male nervous system into hypervigilance. But what psychology now proves is that awareness and regulated breathing can rewire the brain toward calm and control. Dignity begins with this truth. A black man cannot rise in a world that misdefines him until he redefines himself. This book is that redefinition. Chapter 2. Respect and the Historical Wound. Respect for the black man is complicated, not because he is undeserving, but because history taught the world to fear him before it learned to understand him. Respect has been denied socially, weaponized politically, withheld economically, distorted culturally, sabotaged rationally, stripped systematically. When a man grows up in an environment where respect is scarce, he begins to chase dominance instead of dignity, react loudly to disrespect, hide his hurt behind aggression, misunderstand vulnerability as weakness, confuse fear with respect, demand what he's never taught to cultivate. This is the historical wound. The wound isn't just external, it's internal. It lives in the nervous system. It shows up in the voice. It tightens the jaw. It clenches the fist. It forms the ready for anything posture. It makes peace feel unsafe. It turns patience into threat. Every black man carries this wound, not because he failed, but because the system succeeded in creating it. But here's the psychological pivot. Respect is not something the world gives you. Respect is something you embody internally first. When a man learns emotional regulation, self-respect, grounded presence, clear boundaries, emotional intelligence, self-awareness. The world responds differently because he shows up differently. Respect begins with how you talk to yourself, how you breathe through conflict, how you respond to disrespect without losing dignity, how you lead your emotions instead of being led by them. This is the recalibration. When a man becomes emotionally literate, he becomes emotionally sovereign. And a sovereign man does not chase respect, he attracts it. Chapter 3. Trauma, Conditioning, and the Nervous System. This chapter is the turning point of the entire book. Every behavior a man displays, anger, silence, shutdown, impulsivity, defensiveness, numbness, can be traced back to one of three root systems: trauma, conditioning, or nervous system responses. Trauma. Trauma is not only what happened to you, it's what happened inside of you because of what happened. It shapes it. Emotional reactions, coping mechanisms, relationship patterns, stress tolerance, self-worth, worldview. Black men experience trauma differently because the threats are not only personal, they're systematic. Then there's conditioning. Conditioning is what the world taught you to believe. Don't show emotion. Stay ready. Be strong at all times. Silence keeps you safe. React first so no one gets the upper hand. This conditioning becomes your operating system until you rewrite it. Then there's the nervous system. Here's the science. Trauma plus conditioning equals a nervous system stuck in survival mode. Survival mode causes quicker anger, emotional shutdowns, overthinking, hypervigilance, inability to relax, trouble sleeping, defensiveness, impulsive behavior. But survival mode can be deactivated. Here's some tools. Box breathing, naming emotions, body check-ins, grounding techniques, slowing the breath to calm the amygdala, visualization, intentional silence. We keep all of that and elevate it. The goal of this chapter is simple. Teach the Black man how to shift from survival mode into sovereign mode. Sovereign mode is when the mind and body operates from clarity, logic, strategy, patience, presence, strength. This is where dignity resides. This is where respect grows. This is where the internal kingdom stabilizes. When a man calms his nervous system, he masters his life. When he masters his life, he becomes unstoppable. Chapter 4. The power of emotional regulation. A man who cannot regulate himself will always be regulated by the world. Every system, courts, workplace, schools, media, benefits when the Black man reacts instead of respond. Your anger becomes proof. Your silence becomes a weapon turned inward. Your shutdown becomes misdiagnosed as coldness. Your intensity gets mislabeled as a threat. From a psychological standpoint, this is not coincidence. It's conditioning. From a historical standpoint, it's not new. It's inherited. From a spiritual standpoint, it's a battle for your inner throne. And from a mental martial arts standpoint, emotional regulation is your first discipline, your first defense, your first evolution. This isn't about controlling emotions. It's about mastering the energy underneath them. A man who is emotionally regulated, he sees clearly, listens fully, speaks intentionally, moves strategically, chooses calmly, protects his dignity, guards his future. A man who is not emotionally regulated reacts impulsively, gets baited into battles beneath him, moves from survival instead of wisdom, misreads situations, damages relationships, loses opportunity, mistakes and adrenaline for power. The world wants you in survival mode. Survival mode is predictable. Survival mode is reactive. Survival mode is easy to manipulate. Survival mode is loud but not effective. But sovereign mode, that shakes the entire system. The science behind the king. Here's the psychology most men were never taught. Your amygdala controls threat responses. If it senses danger, real or imagined, It reacts before thought. Your prefrontal cortex is your logic, discipline, and decision making. When stressed, angry, or triggered, the amygdala overrides the prefrontal cortex. This creates what scientists call an amygdala hijack. The mind goes offline and survival takes over. Translation: you can't think like a king while your brain thinks you're in war zone. But here's the breakthrough. Breath resets the brain. Naming the emotion unlocks clarity. Stillness restores power. This is a MMA's first truth. Before you move your hands, move your breath. Mental martial arts, the regulation tool set. These are your foundational stances, your emotional equivalents of footwork, guard, and balance. Stance 1, box breathing. Inhale 4 seconds. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4 seconds. Hold for 4 seconds. Repeat 4 to 6 cycles. This pulls the brain out of survival mode and into clarity. In MMA terms, your breath reopens the gates to your kingdom. Stance 2, name the emotion. Neuroscience confirms when you label a feeling, the amygdala calms down. Examples: I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed. I'm overwhelmed. I feel disrespected. Name it, own it. Then choose your next move. This is emotional accuracy, not weakness, not softness, not therapy talk. A man who can name his enemy can defeat it. A man who avoids the truth becomes controlled by it. Stance 3, body check-ins. Your body tells the truth before your mouth does. Ask, is my jaw tight? Are my shoulders raised? Are my fists clenched? Is my breath shallow? Is my chest hot? Relax them one by one. This resets your nervous system and removes panic from the throne. In MMA, a relaxed fighter is a dangerous fighter. Stance 4, internal pause. This is the king's discipline. Before responding, asks, what's my intention? Power or reaction? That single second can save relationships, jobs, opportunities, even lives. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. The calm king framework. A calm king does not need volume to prove strength, does not need emotions to lead the mission, does not chase respect. He embodies it. Does not fight every battle. He chooses the right one. Does not lose himself inside someone else's chaos. Does not let fear dress up as anger. Calm is not passive. Calm is not soft. Calm is not submissive. Calm is mastery. And the world fears a calm black man more than an angry one. Because calmness is unpredictable. Because calmness is clarity. Calmness is control. Because calmness is leadership. The calm king is the archetype the system never wanted you to discover. The spiritual root, breath as ancestry. From an ancestral perspective, your breath is your first elder. Your breath is the only part of you that existed before trauma, before conditioning, before society's expectations. When you return to your breath, you return to your lineage. You regulate not just your emotions, you regulate your bloodline. The realization, no one taught you emotional regulation. Because a regulated black man is powerful, and a powerful black man is unstoppable. This chapter gives you the foundation. The next chapter teaches you how to build the internal kingdom. Chapter 5, The Calm King Framework. A man becomes unstoppable the moment he realizes his true kingdom was never the streets, never the system, never the job, never the validation of women, and never the approval of men. His first and final kingdom is the one within. Every black man carries a throne inside of him, whether he sits on it or not. Yet centuries of assault, physical, emotional, spiritual, systematic, have pushed many men off of that throne into survival mode. This chapter is your return. Your ancestors weren't weak. They weren't uncentered. They weren't reactionary. They weren't emotionally ungoverned. They were rooted, disciplined, spiritually aligned, aware of unseen forces, masters of breath, aware of energy, and deeply connected to the movements of the mind and spirit. You come from men who held kingdoms without crowns, men who led tribes without titles, men who understood silence, self-control, and strategy as form of spiritual intelligence. This chapter restores that lineage. The inner kingdom, a spiritual model of self-governance. To govern anything is another way of saying to control it. When we look at the phrase ment or mentalis or mentality, we get an understanding that governments are controllers of the minds, aka mind control. Well, inside every man lives a spiritual government. Thoughts are the ministers. They advise, but must not rule. Emotions are the soldiers, powerful, loyal, but dangerous without command. The spirit is the throne, the highest authority, the seat of purpose and alignment. When a man is unregulated, those positions get reversed. Emotions jump in the throne. Thoughts become scattered. Spirit gets silenced beneath survival mode. A man ruled by emotions becomes unstable. A man ruled by ego becomes lost. A man ruled by fear becomes reactive. A man ruled by wound becomes unpredictable. But a man ruled by spirit, he becomes immovable. This is the calm king. The calm king is a spiritual warrior. Contrary to the stereotypes forced on black men, calmness is not submission. Calmness is a command of eternal forces. Psychology calls this executive function. Neuroscience calls it prefrontal regulation. Therapists calls it emotional intelligence. Our ancestors call it ma'at, divine order within the self. Mental martial arts calls it guarding your throne. A king who abandons his throne leaves his kingdom undefended. A man who abandons his center leaves his life unprotected. Calmness brings you back to the seat of power. Breath brings you back to awareness. Stillness brings you back to spirit. When calm, you see moves ahead. When calm, you hear intuition clearly. When calm, you read intentions and energy quickly. When calm, you are no longer dragged into battles beneath your rank. The calm king is not passive, he's precise. The breath is the gateway to the throne. Spirit and breath are the same word in many ancient languages. Roh, breath, spirit. Pranuma, breath, soul. Nashama, divine breath. Ka, life force. Your first ancestor was your breath. Everything you survived, your breath survived with you. When you regulate the breath, you regulate the kingdom. When you lose your breath, you lose your throne. This is why MMA begins with breath control. Box breathing, controlled exhalation, nostril breathing, diaphragm anchoring. These practices aren't relaxation, they're reclamation. Every time you breathe with intention, you remind your system, I am home. I am present. I am on the throne. Emotional alchemy, turning reaction into wisdom. Emotions are not your enemies. They're your soldiers. They need leadership. Anger reveals violated boundaries. Fear reveals misalignment or danger. Sadness reveals loss or unmet needs. Shame reveals identity wounds. Joy reveals alignment. Peace reveals spiritual truth. A king who ignores his soldiers loses the kingdom. A king who obeys his soldiers becomes ruled by chaos. The calm king listens to emotion. He translates them. He gathers the intelligence they provide. Then he makes a decision from spirit, not impulse. This is emotional alchemy, the transformation of raw feeling into strategic wisdom. Spirit as the inner throne. Here is the deepest truth of chapter 5. A black man is at his strongest when he is spiritually seated and psychologically still. From this throne, your vision sharpens, your patience expands, your intuition heightens, your voice softens but deepens, your energy becomes royal, your presence becomes stabilizing, your movements become intentional. Spirit aligns the kingdom, Spirit chooses the mission, Spirit directs the energy, Spirit decides which battles matter. Spirit tells the truth no emotion can distort. When Spirit leads, everything else falls into place. The return to the throne. Here is how a man returns to his throne daily. Breathe consciously before you respond. Sit in silence long enough for the mind to quiet. Ask Spirit, not ego, what is the higher purpose? Observe emotions without merging with them. Choose action from calm, not chaos. When you do this consistently, anger becomes clarity, fear becomes intuition, sadness becomes compassion, frustration becomes strategy, impulse becomes discipline, pressure becomes purpose. This is kingship, not the Instagram version, not the ego-driven version, not the performative version, the ancestral version, the spiritually governed version, the version your sons need, the version your daughters deserve, the version your ancestors prayed would return. A king who reclaims his throne becomes a man no system can define or destroy. Chapter 6. Self-talk, self-worth, an inner narrative, the voice inside the man. A man's life doesn't change when his circumstances shift. A man's life changes when his internal narrative transforms. Because your outer life is built from the blueprint of your inner belief. Your body follows your mind. Your habits follow your identity. Your relationship follow your self-worth. Your results follow your narrative. Your future follows the voice you believe. Your inner voice is the architect of your destiny, or the warden of your prison. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most Black men inherit a voice that wasn't theirs. It was shaped by broken systems, broken fathers, broken environments, broken schooling, broken love, broken expectations, broken portrayals of Black masculinity. This voice becomes a lie that feels like truth. But this chapter dismantles those lies one by one. The psychology of self-talk. Cognitive science teaches us this. Your brain believes whatever you repeat consistently. Not what's real, not what's factual, not what's possible, what's repeated. Conscious mind is loyal, not logical. If a man repeatedly hears, "You're dangerous," he becomes defensive. If he hears, "You're not enough," he becomes reactive. If he hears, "Be strong," or "Be punished," he becomes emotionally numb. If he hears, "Don't trust anyone," he becomes relationally distant. Internal dialogue shapes confidence, emotional bandwidth, decision-making, resilience, communication, leadership, love. And here's the deeper spiritual truth. A man's inner voice is the echo of his earliest teachers, the spiritual root of self-worth. In African cosmology, identity is sacred. A man is born with purpose stamped into his spirit, but the world spends his entire childhood trying to erase it. Self-worth is not ego. Self-worth is remembrance. It is the quiet knowing. I come from something divine. I am not random. Your value is not assigned by society. It is inherited from God, from ancestors, from soul. When a man remembers who he is, the world cannot convince him otherwise. The war between two voices. Every Black man carries two internal narrators. The affected voice, formed from trauma, miseducation, stereotypes, and emotional abandonment. It says, "Stay guarded, stay ready. Nobody's coming. Don't let them play you. Don't show weakness. Don't trust love. Don't expect peace." This voice kept you alive, but it cannot help you live. Number 2, the protective voice. This is the voice beneath the wounds, the one that survived everything that tried to silence it. It says, you were made with purpose. You are more powerful than your past. Peace belongs to you. Love is your birthright. You are designed to build, not only survive. Your gentleness is not weakness. Your presence shifts the room. This is the voice of the spirit, the king, the leader, the healed masculine. Your growth depends on which voice you feed. Rebuilding the inner narrative. This is where psychology and spirituality join forces. Cognitive reframing. This tool breaks the inner lie before it becomes behavior. If the thought is, I always mess things up, reframe. I've learned from every challenge and I'm improving daily. If the thought is, I can't trust anyone, reframe. I choose my circle with discernment. I am safe with wise and healed women and men. If I thought, I'm not enough, reframe, I am becoming who I was born to be. Number 2, ancestral affirmation. This is not positive talk. This is identity reclamation. Say, my blood remembers who I am. I walk with the strength of every man before me. My mind is my throne. My spirit is my crown. Affirmations do not change reality. They change the men who meet reality. Number 3, spiritual journaling. This is a conversation with self and ancestors. Prompts. What lie about myself am I ready to release? What truth am I afraid to admit? Where do I silence my own spirit? Who would I become without fear? This is the excavation work. Digging out the false foundation to rebuild a real one. The blueprint of a healthy inner voice. When your inner narrative is healed, it produces confidence without arrogance, humility without self-minimizing, strength without rage, calm without passivity, leadership without ego, love without fear. This is the voice that builds. Healthy families, healthy manhood, healthy minds, healthy futures. A man with a healed inner voice becomes his own author again. The spiritual revelation. The inner narrative is not just psychology, it is prophecy. Every word you speak internally sends a signal into your future. Your inner voice becomes the architect of your outer life. The question is simple. Who is speaking inside you? The wound or the warrior? The trauma or the truth? The boy or the king? The fear or the spirit? This chapter teaches you to choose. Chapter 7. The internal kingdom, mind, emotions, spirit. The kingdom every man must learn to rule. Every black man carries 3 realms inside him. The mind, the strategist, the emotions, the warriors, and the spirit, throne. When these realms are in conflict, the man is in chaos. When these realms are aligned, the man becomes whole. A man doesn't lose his power in the world. He loses it inside himself first. This chapter is about restoring order in the inner kingdom. Because the simple truth is, a man cannot build anything stable outside himself until he stabilizes the kingdom within. The mind, the strategic chamber. Your mind is the council room of your kingdom. It analyzes, interprets, plans, solves, protects, predicts, directs. But psychology teaches us this. The mind is not naturally wise. It is naturally reactive. It learns from experience, trauma, environment, and repetition, meaning your mind has been trained by the world long before you learn to train it yourself. This is why so many men live lives with intrusive thoughts, worst-case scenarios, overthinking, distrust, fear-based planning, sabotage, mental exhaustion. But mental martial arts teaches thoughts are servants, not masters. The king tells the thoughts where to go. To reclaim this chamber, cognitive awareness, identities when thoughts are fear-based, trauma-based, or ego-based, cognitive command, replace them with strategic, grounded, identity-based thoughts, cognitive silence. Use stillness to break the cycles of excessive thinking. When the mind is trained, a man becomes a strategist, not a reactor. The emotions, the warrior chamber. Your emotions are not the enemy. They are the soldiers sworn to protect you. But when soldiers act without leadership, they become destructive. Emotions are your instinct, intuition, alert system, passion, drive, compassion, fire, heart. But untrained emotions become rage, shutdown, numbness, overreaction, jealousy, impulsive, self-sabotage. Here's what psychology plus ancestral wisdom both agree on.